We're on the Bleacher Report on the Oakland Raiders page. And the Raiders are interested in trading up for Bradley Chubb. Yes, the Raiders, for the first time in the history of their franchise, have announced to the world, we're talking about almost 50 years, and they have announced to the world who they're going to trade up for. Okay, sarcasm aside. Yes, I've read comments, and I know some of the comments already, what would come out, like smoke and mirrors and stuff like that. And there's no way the Raiders ever would project this. I mean, obviously the beat writers or whatever want to come up with some stories. You know, it's kind of what I do sometimes. I'm not totally dedicated to talking about the Raiders all day long. Then again, no one pays me to do that, so I have less incentive than Vic. And everyone has an opinion, and other people are commenting that are in his same field. It's just all pure speculative nonsense. I mean, any fan can do it. Any person can do it. Anyone with a microphone, anyone with a typewriter, I mean a keyboard, can do it. I want a new keyboard. A lot of people never consider keyboards. And they're writing stuff and typing online. But these cheap Logitechs, they're garbage. I saw one on Indiegogo. It's a mechanical one. It's like a retro style one. It's like zinc and copper looking, and it's got big, heavy looking, great action. Yeah, that's where it's at. That's my next keyboard. It's about $200. But anyway, as I digress, Bradley Chubb, my prediction for them to trade up. They're apparently looking at my page for ideas. They run out of ideas, and I'm the idea man. And of course, Vic adds his own little flavor to the shindig, and that is to say that they're trading up to get rid of Khalil Mack. Well, that is something to consider. That is something to make people think about. You see, John Gruden has openly said he is envious of the Patriots' business model, basically. That the Patriots, they have a structure in place where they don't hang on to old players and players who cost too much. They just get rid of them. Didn't they just get rid of their left tackle? He is from Mac's draft class, by the way. He was the one that held Mac in 2014, if people remember that. Remember there was a key point in the game where, I mean, he's got his arm around Mac's arm, and he's turned sideways, I think, and it was a key play in the game. It should have been called holding. If they're going to call holding, I mean, they obviously called holding on, what's his name, in the end zone, right before Carr threw the interception because of the also helpful wide receiver. I've forgotten his name on purpose. I mean, the Patriots did it before. They did it before Richard Seymour. It's like, bye. And they just did it with that left tackle, Solder. And the same thing could happen for Mac, because you've got to really ask yourself a question. Can you build a team around, like, just one player on defense? Is that how you build a team, a defensive team, around, like, one player? Or more put to the point, if you're going to be an offensive superpower, you're going to build your team around this great quarterback not named Trent Dilfer, then you've got to economize on the defensive side of the ball. Then again, you got to protect your quarterback when you have this opportunity where you're getting him for the cheap. And you allow your quarterback to get injured in an essentially meaningless game where you're up by so many points. It's not like baseball. You take them out and you can't put them back in. You take them out and you put Burgoyne in there and you just hand the ball off and try to run the ball out. That's what you do. You don't jeopardize. You need to get your backup some time. He had no time in his whole career, basically. And, well, he had more than Cook. But you put those guys in the game. Get them some time. Just don't... You tell them not to screw up. Give them a very simple plan. But you take advantage of that time. It's always about time. Time is... It's not baseball. Baseball can last forever. Baseball, you kick the dirt, you kick the lines that some guy took so meticulously, painted in, and you just kick that at the plate, and you just mess up the whole box, and you call timeout. And in football, it's all about time. And you run out of time. You had Mac on the short, and Kyle came up. He was a second-round pick, so you didn't have that fifth-round option or whatever. So now you have Mac looking for a big contract, and now your salary cap is getting squeezed. This is not pre-salary cap. This is salary cap time where it is structured for you as a team to make sure you constantly get value out of the draft. Scary part is John Gruden has never got value out of the draft. I don't know if he is the one picking the picks, but it can be a crapshoot anyway. I didn't read the article, but it says right there, Conley's accused of files lawsuit against him. Oh, I know anyone can sue anyone for anything, but that's not a good thing. And yes, people argue otherwise. No, we need Bradley Chubb and Khalil Mack. Well, the argument I made is if you get Bradley Chubb, you might cut Irvin. It's as simple as that. They might want Irvin, but if Bradley Chubb is selected, then he becomes expendable, potentially expendable, or someone asked to take a salary cut. And, there's no proof to this. I mean, I'm not overreacting like, wow, I scored. Yeah. This isn't that. Because no one knows anything. And you got these guys in the building that, they're retro-styled Al Davis types. I'm surprised no one asked them about the mimeograph overhead projector. I wonder if John's using them along with Chanel and Teus. I remembered it that time. See, I learned a new word. Chanel and Teus. But, like I said, this is not like me predicting this. I mean, this is not like this is coming to reality. This is purely speculative. All this is speculative. But then again, that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it more exciting. You're going to go into the draft and go like, the Raiders are going to select this guy and this guy and this guy. And if it doesn't happen, it'll never happen any other way because I know this is what they're going to select because this is the best guy right there. It doesn't work that way. You can sit there and pick out the best guys in the draft every year. You want to go through the entire draft history and look and really realize how it's just a crapshoot? A lot of these guys haven't even played. People want that Edmonds guy, and he's 19 years old. Everyone else is a dropout. He's a dropout. Mac was actually a senior, and so wasn't Carr, fifth-year senior. So these guys were a little more mature. especially physically, you know, like football mature. So it's a crapshoot. I mean, you didn't hear Mel Kiper go like Jamarcus Russell. What the hell is that? You didn't hear him, you know, criticize that. They're like, no, they needed a quarterback, and they got a strong one. Al Davis likes strong arms, blah, blah, blah. They didn't even criticize it. No one criticized it until he started holding out, and then they wanted and speculated. I don't even remember when how long later the truth came out about the purple drink. I'm already getting a sore throat, even though I'm drinking purple drink, but it's wine. It's not cough syrup. That would psychosomatically give me a cold if I drank that stuff. It's nasty. I mean, people, I understand people aren't drinking it for taste. They're drinking it for the prescription, the codeine. But I don't like it. I like wine. Wine is passionate. It's passion fruit. It just gets you going, raises your blood pressure. Just don't drink it while you're really emotionally involved in a Raider game. I used to be nasty watching the Raiders. I didn't drink then. I was a kid. I was young or whatever. I didn't drink at all. And I might have blew a gasket. Because they used to like disappoint sometimes. Or they used to hold it down to the last second to win the game. But that is what this draft is all about. Don't know what's going to happen. I've not read every single thing out there. I'm not a football writer. I'm not, you know, like that. I'm just a fan. I know Denver said if we don't get our quarterback, we're going back to the goat farm. I mean the donkey farm. They said they're gonna trade back. Nah, what are they? They're like fifth. The Broncos are at fifth. Yeah, the Broncos, you can't discount them. They Super Bowl champions, you know. So they're at like fifth or something, and I don't have the draft order in top of my head right now, but they're like fifth. You got Cleveland at 4. Got the Jets in there too, and ahead of the Raiders. Obviously, San Francisco is ahead of the Raiders thanks to that defensive back coach that was so great. You got these other teams in front of the Raiders that you got the Giants at number 2. You know, the Giants ready to move on from what's his name? Manning. That's hard to say. They just got rid of a Pierre Paul or whatever, so they could be rolling the dice. I mean, who's the free agent quarterbacks next year? That's New York. New York's got money. New York's big. New York is big time. They're like Dallas. It's big time. You know, I don't know their whole salary structure and who's going to be a free agent next year off the top of my head, or even look into it yet, or who might be cut. You don't know any of those things, or who might be traded for, or who might just drop in the draft. Who knows what they're thinking about getting for a quarterback to replace Manning? If they're even thinking about replacing Manning, they could be thinking, I mean, if they're not thinking about replacing Manning, they're thinking of Pierre Paul's replacement, Mr. Firecracker, with him, like I said before. And you got to consider Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland's been screwing up so many times. And they got a good, defensive end. What's his name? Garnett? I can't even remember his name. Garnett, whatever the guy they selected last year. Garrett. No, I'll never remember his name. I don't care what his name is. He's not on the Raiders. So they got a good guy to pair up with him. They could also trade down for the first, but then again, they could pick any number of the quarterbacks over number one overall. There's Donald was just featured, showing off how fast his arm speed is. How he releases the ball. They say like he has a long arm motion, but I was looking at a guy with a long arm motion. And I think it's gonna be problematic. And he's the guy, Mahomes or whatever, for Kansas City. You watch his motion? It's awful. It's not compact. It's not like Derek Carr. Derek Carr just like, he was born with a football in his hand. Even though he has small hands, he just slings it. I mean, I know Mahomes can really whip it, but he's got that long arm, that long motion. I didn't notice as much with Donald. I'm not familiar totally with all the the quarterbacks in the draft. I know Rosen, he's got the huge arm, but in Denver's probably looking at him. Of course, they got Paxton, Lynch or whatever. He was same way. I mean, but he was inexperienced. I think if you remember, he was crying last year. He's got a huge arm. So does Rosen, but you don't know about these guys. I mean, these guys, they're all dropouts, aren't they? But you don't know too much about them anyway, because the way the NFL just is, you just don't know. The Raiders have selected quarterbacks very high up, and they didn't do too well, and they went to the other league. Or when the Patriots selected Jim Plunkett, and he floundered in that situation, and then he floundered a little more in San Francisco, and then he came to the Raiders, and he just led them. He just did what he had to do, and he just did it. It was awesome. It was awesome. That was great during that time to be sitting there. People complain about I'm long-winded and storied and like to do pauses, but too bad. I just remember that time. I don't remember the 80s Super Bowl so much. I remember it was on at 6 o'clock. I remember watching it, and it was great because, the neighborhood kids, they all took sides, next door neighbors, they had, the Raiders jacket and the Eagles. One kid had the Eagles, the other the Raiders, and I was just watching it, and I watched the end of the season with the Raiders, and I just started to. This is how I became a Raider fan right then. Is I just watched, and all I could think of was the longest yard. That's all I could think of. I don't know if it was because it's the dark uniforms. They stole the road uniforms from the guards, in the movie, but I think it was the characters. You had these characters that were so over the top, and so. This is pre-cable. This is watching things on television, so it's, and Richard Keel, who played the big tall dude, which is basically he was playing Ben Davison's character, basically, in real life. And he's like, I think I broke his, on TV, I think I broke his freaking neck. Yeah, I think I broke his freaking neck. I didn't see the real version until many years later, including a lot of the intro of that movie. But it was like that. They had these players that were just, they were out there. They're like, would you like to play the gods? The gods? Yeah, you gotta hit them. Yeah, I'd like that. Okay, we'll be talking. They had John Matuzak was touched in the head. touched. They had Because they had all the speed or whatever one time. I mean, at some time, Burt Reynolds had to go over to the black section of the prison and get some speed. They had no speed. And that was the Raiders. To me, that was the Raiders. And it was just a mixture of weirdos and cast-offs, and it's what attracted me. And then I heard Al Davis was from Brockton, Massachusetts, where I'm from. And just I love the colors and the pirate. And I mean, it's just because people call me Captain Morgan. You call Captain Morgan when your last name is Morgan. And so that's it right there. That is the love affair with the Raiders. It starts right there with these renegades who believed in this mantra that this he's a character out of like a Godfather movie, Al Davis. The greatness of the Raiders. I can't do his voice. I can't do the Long Island voice. I mean the Brooklyn voice. Even though my father was born in Brooklyn and he grew up in Long Island, and he was a Giant fan, big Giant fan, and he just died. I don't know what the guy's name for the Giants. He was one of those huge stars for the Giants back in the 40s. Was it Lou Groza or something? He played end, I believe, or center, which meant he played on both sides of the ball. That means he played nose tackle too, because if you played football back then, you played on both sides. It's not football like today where they're like it's everything about speed. It was more about toughness back then. You had to be tough. I mean, I remember that guy. That was that guy. I don't remember his name. He had like a curly looking type of look to him. I can't remember his name. Art Donovan. I remember reading a book about him, about how, they were playing in New York. I don't know what team he played for, but they were in New York, and the fair just left, or the carnival, or the zoo, basically, and there was elephant crap all over the field, and they had to play in that. After a while, they just started throwing it at each other and squishing their faces in. Look, elephant crap. I mean, these players nowadays, they're asking, I broke a nail, I need the cart. And those guys were just all about toughness back then. And there was no AFL back then in the 40s, even in the 50s. You had the NFL. Father was a New York Giants fan. Loved the Giants. But anyway, that's why you look at some of these players with like hesitation, because you don't know what's going on. You don't know how tough they are. But this could come true. This could possibly come true. And really, Mac is a great player, but you have to make business decisions sometime. I personally, and I've said this, what have the Raiders done in the top 3 picks of the draft of late? What impact player have they got to come on their team and be a star? Other than 2014, since that time. Anybody? No one can answer that question. And don't give me Carl Joseph at 14. He wasn't even worth number 14. Give me someone, anyone. You can't. They took all these projects. This guy is a serious pass rusher. In my personal belief, my personal feeling, is draft picks don't mean crap. And all the Raiders have been doing is signing all these veteran players. They don't necessarily need to pick that many people in the draft. He could fall to them, I suppose, but since the San Francisco's all-star linebacker Aldon Smith is in trouble again. They'll have to replace him, right? And they might want to pick this guy up. No, this guy is a serious talent on paper. And you have to roll the dice sometime. Al Davis would be salivating over this guy. He would see him as Greg Townsend, even though he's a little small. He's smaller than Greg Townsend. Greg Townsend was big. He was 280 something, 280 or so, and he was big and strong. And the 83. That's another one. That's another. Oh, that was good times. Oh, in the playoffs, watching the playoffs and having my older brother there, who he grew up in the 70s. And he was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in the 70s, and of course a little bit of the Patriots in 76. But he started watching football again. He stopped watching football for a while, and he's sitting there busting my balls. The Raiders are gonna play the Steelers again, and he's all talking about Terry Bradshaw and arguing with me over, what's his name, the running back. He's arguing me over, just the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers and all those Super Bowls and Chuck Noll, Franco Harris. And he's doing all this. He's busting my balls. They're going to lose. They're going to lose. And then the Raiders win. And then they have to play Seattle. Now, there is no Raider fan on the face of the earth that didn't worry about that game. Oh, man. Seattle, since they came in the league, what was it, like 1977? They had the Raiders. They had their mark. I don't know what it was, especially if they went to the Kingdome. Oh, in the Kingdome. It was so awful. Just that it was so loud there, and the Raiders were just, even though they weren't in like the shotgun or anything, there was no communication, lots of false starts. And remember, Mark Wilson was the quarterback then too. I mean, he was part of that Super Bowl team. In fact, both two teams, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings, I believe. And it was just bad, and you had to be worried. You had to hope. I think Dave Craig was the quarterback. You had to hope he fumbled 10 times. I mean, only a problem. And you had to worry. And I did, until the Raiders started taking over the game. And then it was good. But then again, the ball busting didn't stop. Then it was the Super Bowl with the Redskins. And the Redskins were just like, kind of like the Eagles in 1980. They were this superpower offense, basically. Scored a lot of points. The Hogs. And they were a little different. John Riggins compared to, was it Wilbur Montgomery? But they were still intimidating because they beat the Raiders earlier that year. I remember Inside the NFL. I just remember they did a special, I think, LA thing, and you heard the plane going above Nick Bonaconi and Len Dawson, and I just remember, it was always on a Friday night. Had a pizza from a local place here called Christos. It doesn't exist in my city anymore. I moved to another town, and it's a little smaller. The old man died, meaning the original owner, and it was good, and it was just good to thinking about that. Actually, Len Dawson was not talking crap about the Raiders. They were respected. Marcus Allen. I'm bringing all this stuff up or whatever and just rambling because, Al Davis, all these stories are coming out. There's some good stories on the Raiders.com. They brought guy in to talk about the I can't remember his name, but he was on the Raiders staff during World War II. Yeah, during 1983-84 Super Bowl, and some great stories. And I've heard other great stories about Marcus Allen that Al Davis wasn't going to want him. And, he later didn't want him. But that was a shame because every Raider fan hated when he went to the Chiefs. But, I mean, that's why this draft is so tricky. But the Raiders have not done anything. No one's going to tell me that they've done anything of late. Like I said, my feeling on this draft is you trade. If you have to trade up to get this guy, you trade. You get this guy, and you're gonna have to cut Irvin, I think, and then you're gonna have to re-sign Mack, and I want him opposite Mack, and then you're gonna look for a DT at some time. I mean, I don't know if they look at other positions. I mean, they got so many people they brought in, so there's gonna be changes later. We don't know. They brought so many people in. You have to think that John Gruden, yes, he sees holes in this and that, but do they have the money to even afford so many draft picks? Yes, they want to bring players in, and they want to experiment, but they're doing that right now. So, I say trade up for this guy. Don't go with a linebacker. You need to improve the defensive line. You could say Vita Vea, but this guy I think is better than him. He is, to me, I'm going to compare him. He's not the same, but he's my Greg Townsend pick. He's that guy that goes in with some of the other picks the Raiders had around that time. Well, I think it was that year. Wasn't he a rookie too? Bill Bacall and Howie Long. Can't remember what year they started. But that's my pick. And someone agrees with me. And, Vic talked about it on here. My mouse is broke. My keyboard's broke. My mouse is broke. He's just talking about, I think this has the quote. It says, for the first time in 13 years, the Raiders could trade up in the first round of the NFL draft Thursday. For defensive end, Bradley Chubb. I'm going to call him Edge. I'm so sick of that word. There's Edge shaving gel. I shave with motor oil. Moving up to 5 or 6. I don't know what he means by 5. Who's at 5? That's the Broncos. They ain't trading with the Raiders. I don't know if it takes a stockpile of picks. The Raiders are picking at 10. I would think it would take... I mean, if they don't go into next year, they don't defer it, which is a possibility they could defer. I mean, a second and a fourth, maybe? I actually don't have a trade-up calculator handy, but I don't see that as being as costly as what they're saying. And the Bleacher Report talks about it too. I'm not going to click on that to see what they think it would cost, but I would think it would be something along those lines, a second and a fourth. It's not going to be like a second, a fourth, and a first round next year or something. That's what it would be if they were trading Mack or something. If they were trading him like to Cleveland, it's going to cost Cleveland probably their first and it could cost them their first and their fourth of this year. That ain't going to happen. I actually don't think Mack is being traded. Even though when you think about how the defense is structured, I mean, just the team structure, the salary cap, it's, it's something to consider, but I don't see it happening right now. And my hope, I would be really happy if they traded up for Chubb, or if he fell. If he fell, I'll do the Photoshop right now with a marijuana joint in his mouth right before the draft, because he'll love me for that. You see if we can get him down to the 10th pick. What did Alden Smith originally do? He was drunk. Yeah, he got charged with drunk drive. Was there another charge before then? I don't know his whole history. He was the San Francisco 49er. As I said in my other video. He's a San Francisco 49er. And he's no longer a Raider, and they need to stop talking about that. But, really, if I'm on par, this is good. This is good for the Raiders. I'm not saying, like Irvin was bad last year, and they might still keep him. I mean, they do rotate players, but I'm not saying this is really going to happen, because the Raiders, like some other articles, this is a rambling post. Left tackle cannot be ignored, and it's how often do you get a left tackle outside of the first round that's really going to be a keeper? Now, there is such a thing as trading for a left tackle. Raiders traded away a left tackle before. Jim Lachey. That worked out well. But you got to consider that Derek Carr needs to be protected. I know they're going to run the ball more, and I like that. That's Raider football. Raider football right there. It's traditional Raider football. A lot more play action. I can't wait to see it. But we don't know where Penn is at. He's 35 years old. They do need a backup plan there. I don't know about how these new coaches, if they can get anything out of all those draft picks, those linemen. I don't know if they think that, Osamelli can, move to left tackle in a pinch. I don't know. We saw what it was like last year. Was it too predictable? Was there another reason, why the Raiders could not find a serviceable backup left tackle? I mean, outside of drafting one, you can view draft picks. I mean, the Raiders, they seem to have a mental block about drafting. You can actually trade. Yes, you can trade your draft picks for existing players who are established, who have proven to be good against speed rushes and all that crap, and being able to do what you want to do on the offensive side of the ball, how you want blocking schemes. Those are all before you have draft picks and you can trade for players. There's nothing wrong with that at all. After all, you're going to get a player that has been established. He's proven that he can do a certain amount of things. So don't scoff about trading draft picks always. You can't always keep them. And if your draft record has been so deplorable in the last 3 years, basically, the top 3 picks, you got to consider trading for existing players. But let's see tomorrow night if I nailed it. Bradley Chubb. But then again, there's no validity to any of this. This is all speculative. That's what makes it fun. Go Raiders.